an article that just came out today on Newsweek, and it's going over exactly what I have spoken about before. One way to end the opioid plague: let them die. I really believe that's what it's going to come down to. I really do. How do you sustain a life of a people that, number one, keep overdosing? It's the same people overdosing over and over and over and over. They're not trying to be productive. They're a strain on society. They're causing a public danger. They are not really contributing anything to society, but they're draining the society. So what do you do? And I really, as I stated before, believe there's going to have to be some hard decisions made even over the next year, because so many states are going broke from dealing with these junkies. While more Americans are coming around to the idea that drug addiction should be treated as a public health issue rather than a crime, the recent rise in opioid overdoses threatens this shift in public opinion, especially in areas most ravished by this new plague. In Cincinnati, my hometown, this is the author talking, 174 overdoses took place in less than a week last year. Many counties in Ohio no longer have enough room to store all of the bodies of overdose victims, forcing the state to lend out mobile morgues that are normally reserved for large-scale disasters. The lieutenant governor of the state has opened up about her family's struggle with opioid addiction. The desperation to end this plague has not brought out the best in everyone. Recently, Middletown, Ohio, City Councilman Dan Pickard proposed that paramedics not respond to addicts upon a third overdose. Critics decried the proposal as unbelievably cruel. Pickard countered that many didn't understand how bad the situation has gotten in his city, where out-of-the-box thinking was required. By Pickard's estimation, each overdose response cost the city $1,104. At this rate, he said, emergency services eventually won't be able to respond to other calls in this, and the city is going to run out of money. And this is going to happen around the country. It is. It's people got to keep adding money to the budget. Number one, for the Narcan. Number two, for the EMS. All of the emergency hospital visits, which have skyrocketed across the country. And you got all kinds of emergency responders, and there's a lot of places that are saying this is taking up all the time of the police and the fire department running to these overdose calls. They get so many in, the EMTs just can't do it alone without the fire department and the police department helping out in these situations. And a lot of them are working overtime because of the calls. There are cities that get over 30 calls a day, all overdosing victims. It's ridiculous. The city, meanwhile, is not even sure Pickard's proposal is legal. However, if lawyers determine that it is, it will come up for a city council vote. Should the proposal pass, supporters may be surprised at how little it does to stop the onslaught of drug overdose calls. Middletown Fire Department Chief Paul Lottie, a critic of the proposal, noted that 85% of the department's overdose runs involve first-time callers who would not be subjected to the three strikes rule. And this is a doctor that refused to prescribe opioids. But like I said, as long as you got the street drugs, they really don't need the opioids from the doctor, technically. Effective or not, the policy still raises ethical concerns. Paramedics should not become at the direction of ill-informed politician alabastards or who deserves to live or who deserves to die based on one's lifestyle choices, even the sorts of serial overdosers who grab headlines such as a Dayton, Ohio man who have been revived by paramedics 20 times do not deserve to just be left for dead in the streets. Addicts need access to treatment, not ultimatums, but those addicts are not going to treatments. And being that they are adults, how do you force them into treatment? You really can't. But seldom is treatment readily available. An arcane federal law has inhibited the growth of drug treatment centers in places where they are needed the most. Centers that accept Medicaid patients are prohibited from having more than 16 beds. With a population of less than 50,000, Middletown has already seen 577 doses in 2017 alone. Permitting drug treatment centers to expand at the local level would be a step in the right direction, giving addicts more opportunities to get the help they need and relieving pressure on emergency services in overcrowded jails. More treatment centers are only one part of the equation, of course. Currently, these centers are limited in what they can provide for addicts by America's outdated drug laws. When Switzerland experienced a heroin plague in the early 1990s, it started treating addicts with substitute therapy, using opiates like methadone to taper off addiction to other opiates, and even giving prescription heroin to some heavy users. It worked. Methadone treatment is becoming more common in the United States, despite being hampered by Medicaid rules regarding its use. But the nation is still a long way off from taking on major reforms like the Swiss did. In fact, the Drug Enforcement Administration is still sticking to its old ways of prohibiting any drugs that set their eyes on, including Crampton, another substitute drug addicts can use in place of more dangerous opioids. I never heard of that. Okay, well, that's a new one. I'm gonna have to look that one up. Crampton. I'm gonna look that one up. Despite the rhetoric of the DEA and other government regulators, drug prohibition has made many drugs like heroin far more dangerous than they would be otherwise. Large spikes in overdose deaths often involve influxes of heroin laced with synthetic opioids like fentanyl or carfentanil, which are far more potent than heroin itself. Because these drugs are brought on the black market, users have no way of knowing what they're really buying and thus no way to adjust their dosing according with synthetics are in play. This doesn't seem to matter to the DEA. U.S. drug prohibition laws aren't set up to solve drug addiction so much as satisfy the need to punish what is viewed as bad behavior. Pickard himself said that the proposed three strikes rule for drug overdoses in Middletown is not a proposal to solve the drug problem. He said he wants to put fear in people thinking about overdosing in his town. But drug addiction makes people do irrational things. Addicts are not going to ask themselves if they're within Middletown city limits before shooting up. As long as politicians and government officials continue to view the opioid plague as a war to be fought against drug users rather than a battle to save them. Many more lives will be lost. Okay, so we save them, and then what? Then you're going back out there to revive them again and again and again. So you're saying essentially just keep going out there endlessly and saving people that really don't want to be saved. All right, let's go and listen to this video.
This summer, people are experiencing all the excitement Chevy has to offer. Go for thrilling drives and deals at the Chevy Summer Drive. Find deal roads at your local Chevy dealer.
We cannot just work to prevent future addicts. We're going to need to do more to help the millions that already exist, which means more investment in treatment programs, as well as increasing the availability of drugs like naloxone, commonly used in a nasal spray to rescue people from overdoses. Because, as this firehouse makes clear, it is a tool that they use with depressing frequency.
So every single firefighter in the Revere Fire Department knows how to use this, has been trained on this.
Yes.
And has used it.
Yes. From the chief down, we tend to have more overdoses than we do fires. So it's a piece of equipment that we can't go without now, just like we have the hose.
It's true. Firefighters might be more likely to use a nasal spray than a hose, which is really going to f up those hot firefighter calendars. Because something about an overdose reversing nasal spray isn't quite as sexy. It's still sexy, but just not quite as sexy. It is still sexy though, just not quite, but still, and that's not the point. The point is, there is no one simple answer here. Not all opioid addicts will respond to the same treatment, and not all people in pain will find relief from alternative therapies. This is going to take a massive effort and a significant investment. It won't be cheap, it won't be quick, and it won't be easy. And it is hard not to be angry at the drug companies like Purdue, whose promise of cheap, quick, easy pain solutions help put us in this mess. Because while they may not be solely responsible, if you were to ask me if they bear significant blame for reckless, greedy behavior which contributed to this massive public health crisis, I might not say yes exactly, but I would definitely say, uh-huh.
Yeah, but you know what? I understand what they're saying. But I have been on opioids even after surgery. And I have to say, I didn't get hooked like that. So it really does depend on the individual. And if you really don't want to do that, if it's not just within you to do those type of drugs, you won't. Me, I'm the kind of person, I don't even like taking a damn aspirin, okay? If you gave me a pill right now, I would be reluctant about taking it. I'm just not a big pill taker, never smoked, and I sure ain't putting no shit up my nose. So it's just not for me. So what part of it is the drug addict's responsibility? You're blaming the pharmaceutical. You're saying it should not be a crime. So in my opinion, all the excuses you're coming up with is to take any responsibility from the person that's on the drug. Where when the crack epidemic happened, you had no problem blaming the dealer, blaming the crack user, blaming anybody, whether they were directly involved or indirectly involved. And I remember the crack bust. Cops would go into a house and anybody standing in that house was arrested. It didn't matter if you were not directly responsible for having the drug in the house. If you were there, you got arrested. Plain and simple. Where when it comes down to them, oh, let's just pat them on the head and say it's a public health issue. Well, at the rate that you're going, how are you going to ever make a difference in taking down the plague? You won't. You won't even do the right thing when it comes down to the addict. So, like I said before, there is no end in sight. And just the way they're handling things, that end ain't coming. Please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, please do. Peace, family.